if we're going to hashtag time's up and we're going to hashtag me too, we have to recognize that for some of our young men, me too is a thing for them as well. And we have to be mindful of that. And I think that that can come through, you know, age appropriate sex ed across the lifespan.
You're listening to the Almost 30 podcast, hosted by Krista Williams and Lindsay Simsick. Almost 30 started as a conversation about the transition from our 20s to our 30s. But then we realized life is full of transitions. So we expanded our mission.
We are an intuition-led, wellness-focused lifestyle podcast that promises to deliver authentic conversations, diverse points of view, and insights rooted in optimism, growth, and intention. The Almost 30 Nation community is a group of purposeful dreamers who are smart, passionate, and always seeking the full potential in every aspect of their lives.
At Almost 30, we're making magic together. We dream it,
and then we do it.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Almost 30 podcast.
Here we go.
Hi, guys.
Whoa.
Welcome back to Almost 30 podcast.
Maybe for the next rebrand, we do a jingle.
We should do a jingle. I think we talked about that.
Are you down?
Yeah. I just stuffed 2 blender bombs in my mouth. They were so bomb.
We were going to start with the chewing as like almost like an ad spot.
Yeah. This is not sponsored yet.
They're chewy.
They're so chewy.
No, they're great. But
like,
they're
like cookies.
But let's be real. You're supposed to blend them up and we just eat them.
Fuck the game. I don't want to blend it. Actually, I like it blended. It's amazing blended.
Yeah,
but
I love it blended.
I really enjoy like the little doughiness of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm,
I'm trying to still not do liquids when I'm eating, even though I'm kind of giving up on that.
Oh yeah, I told one of my best friends from high school is here visiting and we were eating dinner last night and I told her this. And then like halfway through, she's like, fuck this. She's like, I'm going to drink water. I was like,
Go for it.
I was like, I didn't discuss it to make it a rule because I don't always follow it.
Yeah, honestly.
But yeah, Hannah Bronfman told us that where like, you don't drink during when you're eating and then like for what, 20 minutes after?
45 before and
what?
45 after. Oh, I found that it was cutting down on my water consumption in general, but I definitely felt nice to do that. To not drink before or after.
I think it's just a mind fuck when you realize you're like, I need, like if you say like, I'm not going to have water for the next 45 minutes, you're like, I need water.
I was like trying to go to the bathroom.
Oh my God, my water was shut off and we had me here. We had our person who was being interviewed, their child, and then someone else. And like everyone had to go to the bathroom, but I forgot that my water's being shut off for an X amount of time today. And I took a big shit. Huge. And then I realized I like pressed the flush. I was like, oh my God, everyone's coming over right now. So I made like a stupid sign. I was like, cannot go in here. Water not working. Huge
like
dump.
Tape.
I used poopery and I just dumped the whole thing on it. I was like at a prayer and I kept going outside to the water guys. But anyway, all is well.
All's well. We could flush.
Yeah. Here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah. I do want to re-record that about our intro. My here we go.
I know, me too.
Every time I hear it.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Here we go. Actually,
here we go.
I actually want to re-record it in general.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
I need to pick up the energy in it.
I feel the same way. What do you guys think? They're like, it's fine. Don't do anything.
Honestly.
You're perfect. Oh, we love you.
I know when I know though. So it's like, you know, my quest for perfectionism. It's not like when I get there for some things I stop. I'm like, all right, cool. That. Like the rebrand. I'm good.
Yeah, your feedback on the rebrand has been so nice and like thoughtful. A lot of people were like, I know how much work this is and I really give you a lot of credit. And yes, it was a lot of work. The team worked real hard. So
yeah, I was so impressed. Chloe from Leo Creative. Justin always calls her Leo Creative.
Oh, yes.
He's like, how's Leo Creative?
Leo Creative or Chloe Leonard Studio is the Instagram.
Sorry. Yeah.
But yes, Chloe
She crushed it. She thought of everything. She created our new beautiful website that you guys can see at almost30podcast.com.
Mm-hmm.
She was responsible for, you know, so much of the launch, social materials, those beautiful videos. Everything you saw online was, you know, Chloe and her vision. And there was a lot too with Mary of Drawn by Mary. You can find her on Instagram. And she did our beautiful iTunes cover art. that we love so much. And she gave us a lot of the illustrations that you guys are seeing on like Facebook and other places.
Yeah, it was a joy to work with her.
Yeah, it was a joy.
Thank you to everyone who contributed. You know who you are, and we just love you very, very much.
Yeah, and then we got our tour branding from 99 Designs, who is dear friends of ours. We loved working with them. It was so easy. I've actually never worked with them before, and it was a freaking dream. It was so easy. Like they found us the best designer so quickly. They managed the whole process. It was just like, and then our tour logo is so rad. It like fits in perfectly. It's just so rad. And actually, if you want to get $25 off your 99 Designs design, you can by going to 99designs.com/promo/almost30. And Kayla did an incredible job of getting the tour together for us to come see y'all this year.
Yeah, click on that events tour tab on almost30podcast.com and you can see everywhere we're going this year. We're really, really pumped to meet you. We're going to as many places as we can. We were trying to fill in the gaps from last year, kind of just taking note of where we were last year and then, what cities haven't we been to? So we do know and are very aware that there are cities not on the list that we do have a lot of listeners in. So just know that we have you on our mind and our hearts, and we will be there sometime in the near future. So do not fret. But if you can make a short little, maybe a long weekend or a few days trip with a few girlfriends, it'll be totally worth it. And we'd love to hang with you.
Yeah, we would love that. Can't wait. Anyways. All right. I don't know what kind of mood I'm in today.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's a very interesting mood.
We wanted to actually we've been asking the group a lot because we just kind of want to talk about what you guys want to talk about. And usually what you want to talk about, something we're probably wondering ourselves or have gone through. But we wanted to circle back on something that people keep bringing up. We've talked about it on the podcast before, but making friends as an adult, and also on the other side of that, letting go of friends who maybe don't serve you. Just this whole friendship as an adult thing is and can be very challenging.
Yeah, there was a question in the group from Sam Simon that had a bunch of likes. She said, finding new friendships in your 20s and 30s when everyone has different lives. Some are in relationships, some are not. Some are married, some have kids, some are working, some in schools, etc. So finding new friendships in your 20s and 30s when everyone has different lives.
I don't have many friends, close friends, who
Hey guys, I'm rolling my eyes.
Who are married and have kids.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, actually.
Meaning,
a lot of my friends are in the same.
I'm trying to establish like the context of how my experience. I have a lot of friends, but I'm just saying close friends who are married and have kids. I don't. So I'm not getting the rejection like, hey, the kids are wild today, can't hang out. But talking to my friend Michelle, who's in town, 7 out of 8 of her friends are married and pregnant or having kids or whatever. And she's not. So I do think there is like some sort, just like to kick it off, like for me, I just think about kind of a balance of friends and where they are in their lives. It really keeps me like grounded to kind of have those in my life who have stable relationships, great relationships, and are having kids and maybe have a house. And I can't even wrap my head around having a house. Just kind of having these relationships that give me a sense of either hope or reminder. Maybe someone's like really wild and free and they travel the world all the time and they have no roots. Like just kind of having those reminders through friendships, rather than thinking about like, wow, everyone's so different and I just feel like I don't have a place. It's like, well, you're a different friend to someone too. Like kind of owning like the differences and also taking from your friends those lessons or slices of their life that are good reminders to incorporate into yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And not seeing it as like judgmental ways to divide you or like keep you from them. I think when I realized that my mom and dad were people is when I realized that my friends were people with children. Do you know what I mean? Like, so my realization that, my mother was just a person, my father is just a person, my mom is not a mom or a dad, which means that they are X, Y, and Z, that they are perfect, that they are holier than thou, that they don't want to do this, that they don't want to do that. And I think a lot of people have this like romanticized idea of what parents should be. And I think that through the life, it becomes challenging because there's a dissonance between who they actually are and who they think their parents should be. And I think with friends, it took me a while to be like, oh, like they're actually the same people, but they just have this new door that's opened in their life that's given them this beautiful capacity to love that I'm looking forward to experience. And it's almost like it's a really special thing, especially when people have kids or when they're married, you know, to know that like there's an added layer of happiness and joy that they are able to tap into on a consistent basis that I could benefit from being friends with them. You know, if you're thinking about it from, you know, an energetic way, it's like, of course I'm benefiting and I hope that I too bring energy and beauty to their life. But when people are in stable, happy relationships, when people have children that they love, they're such a pleasure to be around. You know, they're so amazing to be around. They're so constant. They're so like present. They just have, for the most part, this is my experience, obviously, a sense of self that like I really can tap into and I really, really enjoy being around. So I found that when it comes to relationships that, you know, 5 years ago, I'd be like, you know, someone's married. I'm like, well, see you later. Someone's having a kid. I'm like, well, never going to talk to you again. But now it's just like appreciating that part of their life and the evolution of it. I think for finding new friends, Almost 30 Ambassador Program, slight plug.
Number
but
one.
We have our ambassador program that helps people meet people for this specific reason, because it allows you this space with the ambassador meetups that everyone's hosting in cities where you are, where people have, you know, the things in common that we come to Almost 30 for: health, wellness, spirituality, entrepreneurship, personal growth, development, humor, whatever. So whatever reasons you're coming to Almost 30, you could find at these ambassador groups, and which is why we created it, to help you guys find those connections and kind of get over that searching of finding people that are like you or that can be your friends. Because, you know, there's two things. There's like the thought that I have where people have more friends than they think if they would actually take the second to recognize and appreciate those friends. And I would think that people underestimate how many people care for them in their lives and how many people would actually be there for them, or how many people actually value them more than they think. You know, because of social media, we're now looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of followers, or thousands and thousands and thousands of connections. And this is such a number that's greater than any number that our parents were working with, that their parents were working with. It was really a success. Carrie Bradshaw, Sex and the City, she had 3 girlfriends. That's it. She had men she dated, 3 girlfriends. And now we're kind of like, okay, we need to have hundreds and hundreds of friends, or 20 friends, or a certain amount of friends, rather than like taking stock of like the people in their life that they actually want to energetically spend their time with, or energetically spend their time as a currency, money on. And I think that by taking stock of those people, by seeing who's still a fit, by seeing who you really appreciate and really love, spending more time with them, investing in them more, I think that will really bear a lot of fruit for you in your life. And then there's the other part of it, which is becoming the person you want to be. And maybe that is having a time period in your life where you don't have as many friends, quote unquote, and you're not distracting yourself from doing the inner work that you need to do to be that person that's going to attract people you want to be with. So a lot of it, you know, I definitely am someone that through my life have used people around me as a distraction for doing the work, for doing shadow work, or for doing personal work and development, by always being surrounded by people. I'm like very much an extrovert. I very much breathe and live off of energy of others. I've never really been alone in a lot of cases. And I've used that as a way to distract myself from being alone, from doing the work, from really getting insular or going in. You know, I've had periods of time where I've done slight work, but I feel like people could really see it as an opportunity rather than searching for someone that's going to be their friend, you know, a new friend, whatever, and use it as a time to do the work. Like, you know, like you talked about with being single in your solo episode.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And yeah, like to piggyback off of that, it's like kind of understanding that like, because we are all individuals, we are going to have friendships in very specific individual ways. So sometimes I would get tripped up like right out of college and I'm in New York City and thinking about like, okay, so what does friendships look like here in this big city? And you kind of go off of, well, in college I had like 12 girlfriends and we would always go out, and that's probably how the structure I should have here. And for me, really the way I thrive in friendship is to kind of have, and this is just specific to me. So 12 girlfriends for you might really work. And that might be your how you are grounded in friendship. For me, it's like I have kind of friends scattered, and not very often do they all come together as one. But that's kind of how I'm able to give a lot of energy to those friends kind of separately, but also being really kind to yourself, because I have a tendency to compare. So for me, that I might say like, that might look weird to people, and people might think like I'm weird not getting us all together, but that's just how I thrive in friendship. And then also lately I've been kind of thinking about like, how do other people thrive in friendship? And maybe with those individual friends, I say like, hey, like what is the most meaningful way that we can connect? And I've only said this. I when I texted a mutual friend of ours the other day, because I was like, oh, she's married. One, you know what I mean? I'm very aware of like priorities and like responsibilities. So it's like, okay, knowing that it's a weekend, she's married. And I'm like, what would be like something you would want to do that's special, that's valuing your time, my time, and maybe even multitasking. Like, I don't mind that. I don't mind a multitask. So just being kind of cognizant, like, you know, if you have a friend who's maybe a little bit shy and whatever, maybe it's like, hey, like, would you want me to come over and bring over some food and we can just like hunker down and do Netflix, instead of saying like, hey, shy friend, come out and meet my friends. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, just
how can I serve this?
Just like being, because I would want someone to ask me that. Like, maybe it's like, I'm really not feeling going out at all or something. And if someone was like, hey, like, could I just come over and we could literally like stretch on the floor and just like catch up for an hour? You know what I mean?
Yes, I do know.
It's like, that's our ideal night.
That's our ideal night, literally.
But like, I didn't tend to do that. So just as we get older, like, you know, being a bit more thoughtful and specific per friendship.
Yeah, I love that.
You know?
LA's really given me permission for that.
Yeah.
Hi, do you want to go get tea?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, do you want to walk? Hi, do you want to come stretch? Do you want to literally chill on the couch? Maybe it's also getting older. I think a lot too. But
geriatric friendship is fun.
Honestly. I mean, want to have dinner at 5. Literally.
That's the dream.
Also too, yeah, I really love that. And also too, I think that a lot of times people, I think I touched on this before, but I just want to reiterate it. When I had 20 friends that I was with all the time, it was a huge fucking distraction for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my life
Same.
And I'm not saying that was not so important and special to me. Like, every single person I could think about and feel such a soul gratitude for the joy and for the growth that they provided me. But the fact that I would have something to do every single night and every weekend because there's so many people really didn't allow me to grow or think about what I wanted to do with my life. So it just perpetuated this life of working at a job that I didn't really love, you know, dating people I probably didn't like, or whatever it is that I was doing. It just kind of like used up my time in a way that like didn't really, it helped me in a way of learning to be a better friend, learning to be more cognizant, thoughtful of others, but it really didn't help me from a personal growth perspective. So using that time that you do have alone, if you are looking for friends or if you are in a place of this, and really just doing the work. You could do Lacey Phillips' program to be magnetic. I think that's a really great idea. We have a code almost 30 if you want to get a new course. But I think doing some sort of inner work during this in-between time is a really beautiful idea.
And it's funny, and maybe because we're just kind of so in it, and you guys have permission to roll your eyes on this, but like, you know, it's very noticeable when someone's not doing the work or they're resisting doing the work. And I say that in quotations because it's going to look different for everyone, but it's just so obvious. And it's almost like you, as a friend, you want to help, but then it's like, you also know that they're on their own thing. But in a friend group, especially, it's just so obvious. So yeah, I reiterate, because I've done it, where you take that alone time, and it is really sacred time to be able to, you know, go inward. There's a lot of opinions if you're in a big friend group. There's a lot of ways to compare yourself. There's a lot of clothes to share. You know what I mean? Figure out your own style. I don't know.
I know. I think about this one piece of article of clothing that one of my friends has probably once a week.
Honestly.
I want it back.
Totally.
I'm not going to call him out on this pod.
But yeah, it's such a good question. Honestly, I think we're probably gonna have this conversation again when we get married, when we have kids. It's like, it's always evolving. And we had a conversation recently and you brought up, and you can cite it right now, but how the man felt like he was marrying different women.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like when you get into a friendship,
totally,
you are befriending someone who's going to be many people, and
yes.
you do so every 2 years.
I think you've prepared yourself for that.
I know.
Lindsay's talking for herself. She's like, well, with friends, you got to prepare for them to be 100 people. Just warning you guys.
I hope I changed too.
You have. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
But you know what I mean? Because man. But I'm actually really
allowing them space to grow and evolve, and that's a
I'm
thing
excited
too.
about that.
Same as like with a lot of my friendships, it's like that have really long standing, 20 years, whatever. It's like I've now learned to let them breathe. That there are periods in time where I'm really in it and I'm really there and they're really there and we're really connecting and we're really on the same vibe. That sounded really, really dumb. Really
we
dumb.
are vibrating.
Yeah, it's like, when you're really on the same vibe with them.
Hold on, let's take a drag of our
our vape pen. Okay. So when you're really just like, on the same level as your friend, and then but now I've just kind of realized like it's not like I'm like not there for them or whatever. I will be there for whoever needs. But I just am letting them breathe when they need to breathe. I'm letting them evolve in ways that I don't want to influence.
Yeah.
For a lot of people too, it's like I now understand the power that I have over my relationships and then me. And I really just want to be cognizant of that so that I'm not directing. And I've talked about this with Justin. And there's very specific people in my life that I think about this with. I don't want to be directing their path for them. And I don't want to be, back in the day, like remember when you're in your early 20s and you're like, literally, I would write text back for girls to boys. You know what I mean? I would literally tell them what to say. I would like type out emails to write out. I'd type out text, or they would do that for me. Like you kind of dictate what you were going to do. And that's helpful in a lot of ways. I learned a lot in a lot of ways, but it just might not be what's necessarily best for you because it could be a projection of someone else. So you got to be really careful about stuff like that. Tangent.
Yes.
By the way.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think that's a really good one. So hopefully you guys can kind of add to it in the group. I really
Ambassador program is number one.
And just to say something about that, I don't know if you guys know exactly what that looks like, but honestly, this is just us empowering you, all of you out there, to just create community where you are. This is not about putting on these like fancy schmancy events whatsoever. It's really about creating community in any way that feels natural and good and fulfilling to you all. So that could look like a book club. That could look like just one of the girls might be a yoga instructor and you could do it in someone's backyard. We had girls in Minnesota. Susie is our ambassador there. And she was telling us the other day on our ambassador call that they decided, they're like, well, yeah, we could do like a yoga or workout, but like so-and-so is moving. We should just all go over there and help them move.
I mean,
you know what I mean? I was like, yes. And I would never, ever think about that as something that a community like that could do. And that is so beautiful. So it really could look like anything. And we're just in the beginning stages. So we're learning. And if you don't have a subgroup or an ambassador near you and you'd like to maybe become an ambassador, just know that it fits into your life. We don't ever want to ask something more of you than you're able to give, but it's hopefully will enhance your life.
Yeah.
New friends, all the things.
No stress. So ambassador program, doing Lacey Phillips work to do some inner work. You can use code almost 30 for any program. And then just really thinking about energy you could spend with them, really cultivating relationships already by thinking consciously about what is best for them and best for you and different ways you can hang out. And then also to not use like the thought to and desire to find friends as a distraction for work that you could be doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was cool.
Cool.
All right, let's do the interview.
Woohoo. All right. Today on the podcast, Michelle Hope.
Oh yeah, cool. So one of the podcasts that I really enjoy listening to is Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions. Please tag them and tell them I love their podcast because they do. And it is a sex podcast, period. So they are just so funny, Wheezy and Mandy, and they're so funny. They're so cool. They're so real. They're so raw. I love their dynamic. They have great voices actually for the podcast. And they had her on for a special R. Kelly episode. So talking about the R. Kelly documentary. that was on Lifetime. And Michelle just really, I just love her perspective and point of view. So this is all about sexuality.
Yeah, she is not your average sexologist. She's an award-winning, passionate edutainer, and she's entertaining as hell. She's funny. She's real. Honestly, we were talking to her and she was, I don't know if she was up in Harlem at one of her schools that she works for, but she was there and like people were coming in the office and she was like, dildo dick, and then like, hey, I'll be right there. She's really someone who can is like a chameleon. She can talk to adults about sex, about, really non-judgmental talk about sex and sexuality exploration, and then talking to kids, so whether it's classes, workshops.
Yeah, she works in school districts. So that's what's so cool about her too, is like she plays both. So like actually being, because for adults, it's like talking about sex is obviously taboo sometimes, but people are into it in a lot of ways. But actually doing the work of like starting from the root of a lot of the sexuality and shame issues that happen within our education system. And we actually talked a lot about the current status of our education system and sex ed. And I really loved learning more about that because it helps us to think about where we get these ideas of sex and sexuality that are so prominent in our culture today.
Yeah, you can follow her at sexpert on Instagram. Highly recommend. And her website is, let me just make sure I get it right, sexpert.com. But she's incredible. So, you'll love this episode. If you love this episode, share it with your friends, rate and review on iTunes. It means the world to us. We'll share a review on the other side of this episode. And again, if you'd like to become a part of the ambassador program, community at almost30podcast.com. You can email us there. Shara is our lead ambassador, so she will help to facilitate the conversation. And check out our new branding, peep it, almost30podcast.com.
Yeah, Almost 30 Podcast on Instagram. If you are interested in starting a podcast, growing a podcast, or monetizing a podcast, we put every single resource that we've ever used to grow Almost 30 on yourpodcastpro.com. YOUR podcastpro.com. Woo! Enjoy this.
Let's do it. TMI, but I spent way too many years suffering from UTIs post-sex.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge thing. And I think for a lot of women, there's a lot of shame around it. And there's a lot of discomfort. And it's one of those things that if you have it, you're really down for the count. You're uncomfortable in your body. You're uncomfortable wherever you are. You're kind of thinking about something that really, can be prevented or can be alleviated with Eucora.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of activities unrelated to sex that can introduce bacteria and increase your risk of developing a UTI. So that's exercise, travel, swimming, camping, taking baths, feeling stressed, all of those things. And so if you do suffer from UTIs, what you do is you take Eucora immediately following any of these types of activities that might trigger your UTI. And this helps to flush the new bacteria.
Yeah. And we got some and I drank it. It's freaking delicious.
It's so delicious.
And the ingredients are actually just good for you normally.
Vitamin C, vitamin B6, calcium, magnesium, potassium. There's a natural lemon flavor, citric acid, a little bit of stevia to make it a tiny bit sweet, beet juice powder. It's so good, so easy. You mix it with 8 ounces of water and there you go.
Yeah, it's the best. So if you drink it right after sex, it helps fight UTIs because it binds with the new bacteria that would normally give you a UTI and flushes it out in your pee.
Magic.
So it's super easy. It's magic. We are so proud to work with this company. We love that it's female focused and we love that it's really doing something new and important in the space.
Yeah. So if you go to Eucora.com, that's UQORA.com/almost30, you can use the code almost for 30% off. So Eucora, UQORA.com/almost30, and then use the code almost for 30% off.
Well, I'm so excited to talk to you. I have listened to you many a times on Horrible Decisions, and I also started listening to your podcast. And you are just so smart and cool and aware. And like, I just love your approach to sex. I love that you work with kids. I love that you work with adults. Like, I love that you talk about race. I love that you talk about like trauma. I just love everything that you talk about with sex. And it just felt so aligned when I was especially hearing you on the R. Kelly episode. You killed it. Like, you literally killed it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I am a firm believer that R. Kelly is not only a sick man, he is a hurt man, but that is not to say that hurt people hurt people. I was listening to a really great interview with Roxane Gay, and, she made a good point that yes, hurt people, but not all hurt people hurt people. So there is no excuse. And when it comes to R. Kelly, he is what I call a cancer to the Black community, whose cancer started when he was assaulted, and then he was never given a place to heal. And that is when I think that kind of maladaptive behavior began. And then it just got worse and worse and metastasized to be the monster that he is. It is what it is, right? Like, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, there's no excuse. There's no, it's okay, or anything like that. But I think our society has a problem with allowing men to heal, and men of color. And that's something I'm a big advocate for. I'm not trying to say that I'm justifying their behavior. I'm saying, as a society, this isn't a men's problem. It's not a women's problem. It's a societal problem. And until we can all take a step back and instead of call out, call in, we're not going to be able to make headway like we need to create safer spaces.
It's so interesting. Like, at that young age, we're kind of like pushed out to go to school, like be independent, be your own person. And like, there is this like lack of, I don't know if it's community, but just like the support, like you said, like he didn't have, the people helping him through this. Like, what would that have looked like? And I know you're at school right now. What would that look like, and how are kids, supposed to heal at that young age?
Well, it looks like federally mandated, inclusive, medically accurate sex ed K through 12. That's what it looks like. If we can, this isn't an offensive answer. It has to be defense. We have to be proactive. And at this point, we're living in a society with the Me Too and the Time's Up movement that is reactive. And I'm not saying that those are bad things. Those are amazing things that get the discussion started, but we can't just sit here in this space of the discussion is started. We need preventative measures. It's interesting. My work with young people, I've been in education and been an educator for over 10 years, maybe closer to 15. And what I've seen is most programs, not just in schools, but also in after school and like community-based programs, really focus on the female's responsibility to protect themselves from HIV, to protect themselves from pregnancy. And they say approximately 750,000 young women between the ages of 18 to 24 or 16 to 24 will become pregnant this year. But that means that 750,000 young men also become pregnant. And we have to shift our language, right? So then we can get awareness, we can get the visibility, and we can get preventative programs to help young men understand their part in all of this. I think for far too long, we've just been like, boys will be boys.
Oh God. That's actually we always said boys will be boys is like an excuse for like shitty ass behavior.
Totally. And it's like,
boys will be boys.
If we're going to hashtag Time's Up and we're going to hashtag Me Too, we have to recognize that for some of our young men, Me Too is a thing for them as well. And we have to be mindful of that. And I think that can come through, age appropriate sex ed across the lifespan.
Yeah, that was one thing that I really loved that you talked about in the R. Kelly thing. Just, as the last thing on that was looking out for the young men. It's funny because it seems counterintuitive when you're talking about a monster like R. Kelly and someone that has been molested and assaulted. But, in conversations that we have about self-love or whatever it is, we're talking about health and wellness, we always want to think about the men too, because I feel like females, we've been dealing with traumas for a long time, but we do have, in my experience, I have had the tools and I have had the community of women and communication and strength to deal with things. But men, it seems like, are still stuck with the forced masculinity of, having to be strong, not having a safe space to speak, having to act like everything's okay, and really burying it when we have, Me Too and things like you talked about.
Yeah, I think that what happens is we I hate gender norms. The idea of gender as a social construct created to oppress people. Like, let's just call it what it is. Mm-hmm. And when we put labels and we put behaviors on gender, we limit the ability for that person to realize their most authentic self, right? And for our young men, especially men of color, in my experience, we start this from a very young age. Men don't cry, buck up, man up. We don't do that. And then what also I struggle with is then we're doing it within our own communities. And then the media is doing it to us when we hear reports, Black man shot by police, and then we find out it's a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old. Or, systemics puts us in positions where here in New York, they try 16-year-olds as adults and send them to Rikers. That is a child. And although that child may have experienced a situation where they made a bad decision and ended up in trouble, Rikers is not a place for a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old, right? So where do we help rehabilitate? Where is the restorative work in what we're doing?
And so within like those gender norms, like I can see clearly with women, like the sexualization of women and what kids are seeing now. I'm curious as to like what you've seen with like the sexualization of men as well, and kind of what they're seeing and thinking is normal, and how your work is how you are hoping to change that. Because I think like the images we see, the videos, the conversations, the sneaky stuff that kids are doing, like how does it become like not taboo and we really celebrate each other's sexuality?
I think first, a couple things. One, porn creates a lot of problems. And I'm not here to bash the porn industry. I'm not here to bash porn performers. I'm not even here to bash people who consume porn. However, in the United States, the average age of a first exposure to porn is about 9. So when you're seeing pornographic images, and there's a lot of research that talks about young people and their exposure to sexually explicit material or porn and how that impacts their ability to create healthy relationships later on in life. When it comes to the hypersexualization of men, I think it happens through exposure of explicit material without context. So there's nobody there to have conversations with them like, hey, porn is like a horror film.
Wow.
Wow. Like all that death, like it's like the zombie shows you watch. That's not real. Somebody's not squirting across the room. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
Additionally, yes, she's being choked out, but that's because they consented to that in a contract.
Totally.
For the purposes of entertainment. Like nobody is gagging on your cock in a regular blowjob. That's just and if they are, good for them. But that's not going to happen every single time. That's not something that happens in every. You're not swinging from chandelier. Like, and I think instead of trying to hide porn from them, we start having real conversations about what porn is through the lens of media literacy, right? Like, imagine that. Using objectives of media literacy, like what emotions are they playing on? Who did they make this for? And what are they trying to sell you? Or what is the call to action? If we started teaching young people to look at porn through that lens, porn might not impact, or maybe younger people would have a better context of porn in conjunction with consent. Like there's no consent in porn. Nobody's asking permission.
Wow. I feel like everyone out there is going to be nodding. It's like, you remember that first time where like a guy shoved your head on their dick or like slapped you, or you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, where did that, I never thought about that, like where that came from and where they saw it and why they thought it was okay. And then in turn, I'm thinking, oh, this is normal. Okay. So I have to adapt.
Yes. So then we as young women, we think this is normal. And we also, in conjunction with teaching both men and women about porn, we also need to really start teaching both men and women that female pleasure is the epicenter of consent. Because if you're communicating with a young woman and you're allowing her the opportunity to disclose what she likes, what she dislikes, what gets her off, you will have affirmative consent. That means it's a conversation and you have to listen and you have to talk, right? It's ironic when you think about, just because I'm teaching this today, the steps to putting on a condom. Every time we've taught that, every time it's in an evidence-based program, consent is not a part of that because it's either implied or assumed you already have it. So when you think about the steps of putting on a condom, and the way we teach it is check the expiration date, check for air bubbles, open the condom, pinch the tip, roll to the base, have fun. But nowhere in there is consent. And I find that to be a problem. So the pamphlets lifestyle is given out, doesn't say, hey, check for consent. When I teach this to both adults and young people, it's get consent, check the expiration, check for air bubbles, open it up, pinch the tip, roll it down, get consent again, and then have fun.
How do you, so working in the school system, like I just admire people like you so much. Like you do that, you do so much, like you're a lecturer, you're a speaker, you do all these things. But how do you work within the confines and make change when it's like the epicenter of, to use your words, like where the problems lie? Like do you receive pushback? Like do you receive people that are like, oh, you're changing too much, like you're doing too much, like all that kind of stuff, because people are so like backwards about it.
Yes. But when you are going into schools, it can't be, oh, I'm bringing this program in, it's going to work. It has to be holistic. It has to be parent-teacher conferences with sex education courses. It has to be staff and professional development trainings for the teachers themselves. Because sex ed cannot be one class. It must be integrated through all subjects. Sexuality, holistically, right? So think about if we all got on the same page with language and we co-created language around sexuality and the education of sexuality, how much fun would it have been to have been in your statistics class in math and learned about STIs and the disproportion of positive people in different demographics, right? There are different regions in the United States that have some, like the Bronx, hotbeds for STIs. Now imagine in a statistics class or a math class, we look at that, and then we have a conversation about why is that, right? Which could bleed into a social studies class, right? How cool would it be in a history class? And I don't know if you have any teachers out there watching, but how cool would it be to do, and I've used this in some of the lesson plans, reproductive oppression timeline history, where you have a timeline about American history. Or what about an LGBTQ historical timeline? How can we bring these small things into the classroom to help, one, create safe spaces for all students? Because based on things like GLSEN, we know 1 in 5 students identifies as LGBTQ. Learning about reproductive oppression throughout history to allow for students to gain the language so they know how to speak to their doctors when they go to clinics. And educating parents and staff. I live in New York, so it's a very liberal state, just like California. Students have a lot of rights. But how do we get everybody on the same page to understand those rights?
Cleaning up my life in every area has been one of my goals for 2018 and now in 2019. And one of the first things that I did to do that was cleaned up what I used down there. So Lola tampons is my go-to because their tampons are made with one ingredient, and that is 100% organic cotton.
Yeah, and I didn't know that most major brands use a mix of synthetic ingredients in their products, including like rayon and polyester in my vagina.
Dude, you guys have to really sit there and think about it for 1 second, that is just like an open part of your body that is a gateway to your bloodstream. So it's so important that we are being conscious about what we are putting inside of our bodies.
And what I also love about Lola is that it's a subscription. So it's fully customizable and you can choose your mix of products. So pads, tampons, and they're super flexible within the subscription. So you can change it every month depending on, if you're traveling or if you feel like, ooh, last month I really needed more tampons or pads. It's great. They are very flexible with you. And this is founded by women for women. So, we love that. So for our listeners, we're really excited to offer you 25% off all subscriptions by going to mylola.com and entering the promo code ALMOST. So that's 25% off all subscriptions by going to mylola.com and entering the promo code ALMOST, ALMOST. I've been really empowered in the kitchen lately. I've been using my Chosen Foods oils. So whether it's the spray coconut oil or their new
So bomb.
incredible infused oils.
Chipotle's my shit.
I know.
I don't know if you saw me. I had some veggies and I just sprayed some chipotle on it, just like a little spice up.
Totally. It's my secret because that's how I'm like marinating things and people think I actually take time to like
Actually,
marinate.
I just got really sad because I was going to order a salad for lunch and have my chipotle dressing and I don't have any more.
Oh,
That's actually really a bummer.
I might let you borrow it.
Do you have some?
No. Fuck. I also ran out of it because it's the best.
Because I drink it. We're talking about their chipotle ranch dressing, which is bomb.
Yeah. If you didn't know, most salad dressings on the market contain soybean and canola oil, which causes massive inflammation. So steer clear of that. Chosen Foods is known for, and they basically started the avocado oil craze, and their dressings are made with 100% pure avocado oil, which if you're cooking with avocado oil has a smoke point of 500 degrees, which is great. So there's no toxins being, released if you heat it up to 500 degrees. So for our listeners, we'd love for you to check out Chosen Foods. Try it. Let us know what you think. Join the secret Facebook group. chosenfoods.com/almost30 and use the code almost30 during checkout and you'll get 50% off your order of $10 or more. Okay, you need to stock up.
I know. 50% is a pretty big deal.
So generous. chosenfoods.com/almost30. Use the code almost30 for 50% off your order of $10 or more.
Can you tell us about reproductive oppression history?
Oh, yeah. Where did you want to begin? The very practice of gynecology was founded by Dr. Sims, who used slave women without their consent to practice all of these new methods of medicine. The first speculum actually was a bent fork. And when you think about the exploitation of Black bodies throughout the history of the United States, you'll come to see that both Black and brown people have experienced reproductive oppression. It's not just Tuskegee that makes us distrust when it comes to these issues. And now what we see in our community today is higher rates of STI infections throughout our communities. And I believe that that is connected to the distrust of medicine because of some of the historical things. I believe in and I hope I have a lot of dates, but I believe 1974, almost 25,000, God, I hope I'm saying this right, Puerto Rican women
tested with birth control.
Yeah, and lost their ability to conceive. And I think at that time frame was 70 to 74. They were giving women in Puerto Rico 20 times the amount of progesterone they would later find out the body could handle.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's fascinating because I think none of us know this. I identify as a feminist. I think there are a lot of women out there that are feminists. And I know that sometimes we see a clash between women of color, feminists and white feminists. But sometimes it's I feel like if white women knew all of this stuff, they would be like, whoa, I thought we had it bad. Yeah. But y'all had it real bad.
Real bad, way worse. And that's the thing is in these conversations is I just want to make sure that we're weaving that in as much as possible because that sort of stuff, rocks me to my core. It's And it's not me, and I'm not, taking on any of the pain of it, because it's not mine, but it's so hard to hear, and it's so important that we talk about that. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. And I think that is freaking so important.
Yeah. You mentioned before, just pivoting a little bit, about holistic living and how your sexual health be looked at in that way. So I'm curious what that means and what healthy decisions within, sexual activity and your sexuality in general means.
Well, I think first and foremost, recognizing that sexuality isn't as simple as it's not that easy.
We're sucking dick and we're we're doing we're licking pussy with our hands.
Popping pussy and sucking dick. It's not about that. It's about how I show up to the world. It's my body image issues. It's my gender identity and gender expression. It's my reproductive health. It's how I internalize sensuality and how we recognize sexualization, because that's on a spectrum. And it goes from the space of flirting all the way to the most violent expressions, which would be assault. That is sexualization. Think about how much we use that in marketing. We market cheeseburgers with sex, for God's sakes, right? And then we also have to play into that culture, religion, and community and society, which also plays into media and what messages we're getting. So I think first and foremost, recognizing that sexuality is a part of the psychological, sociological, spiritual, and physical variables that make us human. One of my favorite sayings, ladies, from the womb to the tomb. It's a part of your everyday life, whether you're conscious of it or unconscious of it. When you walk into a room, what you wore, how it fits, how you shake someone's hand, all of that is under the umbrella of sexuality. And I just wish people would recognize that it is a theme that is in our you cannot get away from it. You cannot get away with thinking you can separate sexuality and race. Not possible, right? Or gender. I think when it comes to women, we need to explore our sexuality and recognize that that's okay. You don't have to like what everybody else likes. You can like things that people don't necessarily like. And guess what, girl? Get your freak on, because it is your human right to explore pleasure, learn about pleasure. And I think we should be selfish in that space. We deserve it. Mm-hmm. And then I think also, as far as sexual health goes, don't be afraid to talk to your primary care provider about anything, about how you get gas when you are on top, about people don't talk to their physicians enough. And what we have to remember is you don't have to go to a sex OBGYN to ask sex questions. Your first stop is your primary care provider. And it is up to us to challenge our physicians to do their job. If they feel like you need to go to a specialist, that's fine. But we have not asked our general practitioners enough questions when it comes to our reproductive health. We assume that that's not the person we should talk to. And we have to change that mentality.
Yeah, the shame around it. Do you see at school, with kids, their shame at a young age? What's that experience like? Because I feel like, I grew up in Ohio, Catholic, everyone was white. So there was so much shame around sexuality. And I'm just kind of learning about things in the past couple of years. So I just remember so much shame and privacy and, unacknowledgement and all this kind of stuff. So I'm just curious of what you experience and see now.
Well, I do teach parenting classes, and I do a course on early childhood sexual development because I think it's really important. Remember what I said, womb, tomb. So little boys can be seen on an ultrasound masturbating. Masturbation is absolutely normal, 0 to about 5. Now, I saw your face, your jaw dropped.
Yeah.
Most people are crazy because we don't want to chastise small children for body exploration. We are recognizing it as masturbation, but they are not touching themselves to reach climax or orgasm. They're exploring their body. Additionally, 0 to about 5 or 6, they're going to want to look at everybody else's parts. They're going to want to know because, again, this isn't sexual in nature. That doesn't come till puberty. This is body exploration. So I encourage parents to not chastise, but rather set boundaries, right? I know it feels good, little Bobby, when you touch your penis, but you have to understand that your penis is your private part. You cannot play with that in public, and no one else should touch your penis. That's how we start to create body autonomy. The sooner you can start developing language, even in a child who cannot speak or does not have words, you're putting them in their brain, right? So penis, vagina, breast, anus. Let's try to get rid of hoo-has, the pee. Yes, you can use those words from time to time, but you have to establish that these anatomically correct terms are fundamental in vocabulary at an early age. You then explain, I know it feels good, but you can't do that in public. That way, they know they can trust you without shame. That's how we don't, because shame starts very young. So if we can stop that and say, I know that feels good, but you cannot do that in this public place. And remember, if anybody tries to touch your vagina or your penis, you tell mommy, daddy, grandma, grandpa, whoever it is, because that will give them a leg up in safety. Teaching them that you as a parent or caregiver are the primary support system and that no question is wrong to have from an early age establishes a safe zone when they become teens or go through puberty and they start to try to figure out when their bodies are going haywire, who they can talk to. And have the conversation, start them young, have them often. And that's how we remove shame.
Yeah, I think it's so important starting with the parents. And yeah, because I don't remember any conversations with my parents about that. And then like when I started, exploring my body and masturbating and all of that, like it definitely felt shameful, even though they had never like shamed me per se. I think because it was private and it was something new and something that I couldn't really articulate, it just turned into shame. How have you seen like, that type of shame, how has it translated into someone's adult life? Like, I'm just trying to think of the correlations between maybe some blocks or things happening sexually as an adult because of that as a young child.
So here's, when it comes to shame and the transference of shame to adulthood, what happens is it's a lot of psychological stuff, right? So for me, I started in marriage family therapy. And one of the bases of how we develop relationships is through attachment style, okay? Attachment style is this concept of how do we trust caregivers? And that's usually developed between 0 and 3, right? And then depending on how that trust is formulated, in addition to other experiences as we age, it starts to compound if we have an anxious attachment style, like we think somebody's going to leave us. If we have an avoidant attachment style, we just don't really trust. You can have like anxious avoidant and you can have secure. Unfortunately, I don't have specific numbers of population in front of me. But I think that when it comes to the shame and trauma that we experience as adults, it's usually rooted in an episode or a series of episodes that has reinforced our first initial messaging as a very young child. Now, the caveat there is some type of sexual trauma, whether physical in nature or, and I want to be very clear, not everybody who's experienced sexual trauma has experienced it in a physical way. Okay. That being said, you could have somebody who maybe started their menstrual cycle at school unprepared and got a big stain on their pants and got made fun of at school. And now they have no desire to go to the gynecologist. They have no desire to deal with periods. They have no desire to really pay attention to that space because there is an experience there that brings back negative memories. Or let's say you go through puberty early and maybe you are very voluptuous at a young age. Somebody could have said something to you. You could have experienced sexual harassment at a young age. And kids are silly because we don't have K through 12 sex ed. They don't understand what sexual harassment is. So they make these jokes, they do the slut shaming, not even being conscious of what they're doing or the damage they are placing on someone else. And then it just compounds, you know?
Yeah, you said something about the school, like in the school system, sex ed, having it be medically accurate. So what does that mean in comparison to what is being taught right now?
Well, a lot of times school districts decide what to add into their curriculum, unless it is a state that mandates medically accurate, which not all of them do. So they can kind of pick and choose what they want to teach. Oftentimes that leaves out our LGBTQ youth, which is problematic, because if I'm only teaching pregnancy prevention or HIV risk reduction, and I do not have messaging in there around the importance of all communities, including LGBTQ communities, to understand this information, we put them at greater risk. And we know, based on the data, that men who have sex with men, primarily men of color who have sex with men, are at a much greater risk of contracting HIV. But if we're not having conversations in the classroom to inform them that they too, although they don't need to worry about pregnancy, they do still need to worry about STIs. So we have to make sure the medically accurate part doesn't discriminate against populations that maybe a community might deem inappropriate to talk about in schools, right? We also need to be sure that all the information is up to date. And as far as medically accurate, it's not like, oh, that's a hermaphrodite. That would not be medically accurate language, but I haven't
heard that in so long.
You would be shocked at how some old texts still use that as language.
Wow. And it's interesting to think about, you know, so if there is a separation between church and state, but I don't understand then why LGBTQ aren't considered, because isn't it the churches that believe that that's wrong? Or, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just confused of what the rationale for not including that is. Like, how do they get away with it?
Well, I think what it really boils down to is you look at our current administration has been stripping away rights of transgendered and LGBTQ. Like, it has been an attack on this population. And I think one thing, and I don't know if people are aware of this, but the bill passed to remove trans people from the military under this administration. So when you think about the administration not counting those people good enough to fight for our country, it seems pretty easy to understand why they would just remove that from a sex ed text.
Yeah, you're so right. Yep.
Wow. I was listening to a podcast where you were talking about the spiritual variables and how that affects your sex and sexuality. I'd love to kind of explore that and just, you know, deepen people's understanding of this holistic approach.
So when I say that kind of holistic approach is for me, in the communities I work in, because I do work in predominantly urban communities. Here in New York, I work in Harlem. I have a lot of African Muslim students. And so when you're working in populations where they have very strict beliefs, you have to walk a very fine line of not saying something that would be deemed as culturally inappropriate, but also finding ways to include them in the conversation without removing the respect of their religion, right? And that goes for, I was raised Catholic, you know, we don't believe in birth control. You know, if you have 8 kids, you have 8 kids, right? You know, so really trying to find ways to say, hey, I recognize this might not fall in alignment with your belief system. However, there may come a time when you need this pertinent information for your health. So I don't want to get into the semantics of religious beliefs, but I want to talk about your body health. And then I also, that's like one angle I take. And then I also talk about, again, when it comes to spirituality, we're all balls of energy, right? We have this energy. And when you have intercourse with somebody, or you're exchanging energies, right? Whether it's women with women, men with women, men with men, you're still exchanging very intimate energies, whether it's fingers, tongue, penis, dildo in an orifice. You have to understand that Something is entering into your mouth, your ear, your nose, your vagina, your anus. Something is entering into your body. So that's energy being exchanged. And understanding like chakras. When we think about the chakras and how our energies run through, that root chakra, I always tell people, listen to your inner uterine spidey sense. That's that gut feeling, that root chakra. When we think about internal orgasms, or what some people call cervical orgasms, that's a deep orgasm that radiates throughout the body because it's somebody orgasming on your womb. They're knocking on the door to where you house life, right? Like that's that root chakra, that very base chakra. Similarly for men, in your scrotum, where your epididymis is and where you're holding the key of life, your genetic coding for life, you are giving away that energy. When I work with young people to kind of simplify that for them, because they're not always that woke, if you know what I'm saying, I explain to them, if your penis was a Bugatti, would you park it in every garage?
There you go.
Probably not.
Wow.
And when it comes to my young women, I say, let's think about a vending machine. Now, I know a lot of you young ones out there are used to the vending machines you just swipe the card with, swipe it. But I'm used to the ones where you had to put the dollar in. Now, if that dollar is crumply, if that dollar is not like fitting well into your wallet, if it's not crisp, and crisp could mean a lot of things depending on the relationship, it's not going to go in that machine. So if an inanimate object will think twice before letting something come up in it, maybe we should too. And that's not to slut shame, because a crisp dollar doesn't need to be $100 bill, right? It's whatever parameters you define as crisp. But have some parameters, right? If an inanimate object has them, we should too to some extent. Doesn't mean you couldn't meet a crisp dollar bill at a nightclub and have consensual sex later that night. But go into that nightclub, set in your mind what your boundaries are.
This weekend, I had a girl's birthday. We were at a restaurant, Elefante, in Santa Monica. We had like a chill table outside, and we played for the girls.
What a good idea.
It was so fun.
I love playing games in public.
Me too. Also, too, like I knew the girls there pretty well. Like, you know, like I love them and I know them well, but it really helped me get to know them even better. Like, honestly, I literally left the table and I was like, yo, we're tight. Like, I know like truth or dare things. We did never have I ever. We did most likely. And like, it was so fun and like just made the whole day that much better.
Yeah. I like to think of it as kind of like the party before the party. I know you went to a bungalow afterwards, so I'm sure it prepared you. But it's just like, it's the most fun part of the night. It's a game that brings women together to relive their funniest, most embarrassing and outrageous moments and create new ones. So it's great for birthday parties, like you said, bachelorettes, girls' night in, reunions, anytime you want. I just love this game, and I just love playing a game now that we're like in our 30s. Buy it
for almost 30 ambassadors.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yo, that's gonna
write that down. That's such a good idea. All right, let's give our listeners 15% off when you order For the Girls on Amazon. So you just use the code almost30 at checkout. So Amazon.com, search For the Girls, and you will get 15% off when you use the code almost30 at checkout. Favorite buzzword right now that is actually making an impact on my life is fiber.
Yeah, for real.
I can't get enough. And like, obviously my favorite snack to help me get some fiber also has a touch of sweetness and protein
and crunch.
Skinny dipped.
Skinny dip got that protein, fiber, crunch.
Hey y'all, it's our airport hack. We bring it with us everywhere
on tour,
we go.
It's in all of our bags.
Everywhere we go. For our attendees, for us, honestly, at the end of the day, catch us with skinny dipped in the fridge, just kind of sitting around.
I know.
Throwing skinny dipped in each other's mouths.
Literally.
We love this team at Skinny Dip. They are a female-founded company, founded by a family. And we had them on the podcast, so check out that episode. And we're just so proud to be working with them. SkinnyDipped.com is where you will find some of the most delicious snacks ever. My favorite is the peanut butter. What's your favorite right now?
I like the mint. Tastes like a thin mint, but way better for you and way more filling.
They know how to do it.
Honestly, every flavor though, like I'm not usually like a raspberry chocolate girl. Fucking love that
so
one.
good. It's lightly dusted with these natural flavors, and the layer of chocolate is so thin and crunchy. We love them. So to get 20% off your first order, you can go to skinnydipped.com and use the code almost30. So that's skinnydipped.com, 20% off with the code almost30.
A lot of actually, we said we were talking to you in our secret Facebook group of 10,000 or so badass individuals, and you talked about cervical orgasm, and they wanted to ask about that. Like, how could they have a cervical orgasm?
Well, here's the thing. Let's be real about orgasms. Not everybody's skeeting. I want to get that out the way. The G-spot, there's not enough medical data to guarantee there is one spot on the vagina or inside the anterior wall to make you squirt. It's more of like a triangle. Think of like your clitoris, your labia, like in between your labia majora, and then right across the perineum. That whole area as a triangle is kind of a G-spot, right? Most women will be able to ejaculate with clitoral stimulation. The cervical orgasm is not for everybody. Not everybody will experience that, and it's going to impact women differently, right? Because I don't want, how do I say this? I feel like sometimes a lot of these writers and bloggers put pressure on women to be able to squirt, and I don't want to bullshit you. I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I read them all the time, like, ooh, everybody can squirt. And it's like, that's not fair to say. Not everybody's vagina is the same. So I can't tell your badass women, men, women, everybody, your 10,000 baddies, how to squirt or how to have a cervical orgasm, because I don't know all y'all vaginas. Although I would love to meet them, maybe not too personally. But I think it really comes to self-exploration. I encourage women to masturbate on a regular basis. Like, calendar it like you would calendar your supervision with your boss. At least once a week, twice a month, you need a night where you self-pleasure, because then that is going to help you get a deeper sense of what orgasms you want to radiate out and experience when you're with a partner. I also encourage people to write about their orgasms, take some notes. So then, this is very high level. I'm not teaching young people this, obviously, but I would teach adults the idea of knowing what happens when. What are those feelings? So when you are in a relationship or you have a consistent sex partner, you can reach the most awesomest orgasms through communication, because sex starts in the brain first, not the genitals. You do have the pudendal nerve, which runs up your spine to communicate the brain and the, you know what I'm saying? But it starts in the brain. So I want you to write about it. And that also taps into that sensuality part, and you really understanding your sexual side in a sensual perspective. What smells do you like? Do you like the lights on, lights off, dim? Do you like a little music? What gets you in the mood? What gets that blood flowing to your vagina?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, as well, kind of a part of, learning all of this and people's relationship with like time, and allowing it to be something that is exploratory and communicative, and something that doesn't have to be rushed, or it's a race, or we have to like, there is like this end reward of like making someone come. Like, it's just, I think, like, think back, like anytime I've had a cervical orgasm, it's been because we've taken like a couple hours, and it's like, you know what I mean? There's just this, it's so much more than just the physical. It's the conversation. It's the space that they create, and I think, anytime it's rushed, it's going to be like the surface pleasure.
But those are good too.
Totally. What would you recommend? We've had a conversation on the podcast before where someone said, like, don't use vibrators, like, don't use dildos. It should be like as natural as possible, whatever. So I'm curious as to what you think, because some people say vibrators are like kind of training you to get pleasure out of like a vibrating machine. And that's not what a penis is.
Patriarchy. That is, when I hear you say that, and I know women say this to other women, that is the patriarchy saying that no, women, you need to be satisfied with just an actual penis or a man. Get the fuck out of here with that.
Wow.
Like
There's a woman that said it.
I know.
Because this is the thing we have to understand. I see you with the emoji blowing your mind right now. Right?
Yeah.
Because we have been indoctrinated to buy into the patriarchy, we spew it back out on each other. A vibrator is never going to make your clitoris vibrate off. It's not going to happen. If you feel like you are unable to reach climax without an orgasm, put it away for 30 days, but don't throw them out.
Yeah, for sure.
And even if you were to put the vibrator away, you still may need clitoral stimulation. So now what? Is the patriarchy going to tell us to stop playing with our clits while we're having intercourse because that's training me to satisfy myself? Come on. And I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that because I know y'all were like, this sounds crazy. No. I'm saying that because that is the patriarchy reminding women that we are only sex objects for men, and it is the utmost important to make sure the man is pleased rather than to focus on a woman's pleasure. That is, in essence, what that is. But we as women have to be bold and explain to men, honey, it ain't about you. This is about me, because you gonna come. Like 89% of men will come during sexual intercourse and within 5 minutes. For women, even the process of arousal takes almost 15 to 20 minutes for the blood vasocongestion to happen in the vulva area to get us as lubricated as we need to be able to intake a penis pleasurably, or a dildo, or fingers, or a tongue, or a foot, a toe. I don't know. But the idea is that women should have the right to have their pleasure be at the epicenter of the sex experiences that they are engaging in. And we have not taught men that. We have not taught women that. So what happens is women just go about life like, oh, this is just how it's supposed to be. And then men continue to get away with it. And then these men and women who are just going with status quo shame women who are saying, no, we're not doing it like this. We're not doing it like this. I want my pleasure. My pleasure is important to me. And then they do be like, well, I'll find somebody whose pleasure is not. Bye, boy. Bye, dude. Bye, lover. Because we have to encourage women to be okay with finding their own pleasure. Now, porn, unlike a vibrator, will eat the gray matter of your brain. Because it's the imaging and how we're receiving that, as well as orgasming and the oxytocin releasing in the brain, will start to manipulate your mind into thinking that you need to go. It's like drugs, because oxytocin is what's released during orgasm. So it's like a drug. The more you get used to it, the wilder and more kind of out there or fringy the porn will become. And eventually both men and women can suffer from erectile dysfunction or orgasm, inability to orgasm. And if you are experiencing that, you have to go cold turkey. There are a lot of support groups out there to go cold turkey on porn. But we have to understand that that will definitely mess up the chemical balance in the brain with too much porn.
Wow. That was fucking amazing. On that, so if people want to discover more, they want to this is the last question from me. They want to figure out what turns them on. They've done things normally, most of their life, quote unquote, normally, if you're like a hetero cis or if you're LGBT, what would you say, what would you have them do? Like if it's not outside of porn, like how can they figure out what they're interested in and what turns them on?
Right. So here's what I have to say. I want to make sure I'm being clear. I'm not saying you can't watch porn ever. I'm more concerned about the frequency. So I do think in respect to trying to see what you might be into, porn can be a valuable tool. It's kind of like just not like a keto diet is great, but you probably shouldn't live the rest of your life, Atkins-y or keto-y and go so extreme that you're not getting anything else. Similarly, you don't want to just use porn for everything. What about some erotic literature? Like, when will we stop looking at screens and start using our imaginations again?
Yeah, I feel that.
And really start thinking about fantasy and thinking about what turns us on when we're imagining. Like, even as a millennial, I think we're so addicted to screens that we have lost a little bit of our imagination. There are some card games out there that I would suggest. There is the I will, I want, I won't list that was created by, I think it's Miss Becca. I'll be sure to email you guys that so you can share it.
Great.
I love erotic literature. My favorite book, if you're into BDSM or want to explore that, it's kind of intense. It's called Venus in Furs. It's much better than 50 Shades of Grey. It's much shorter and much more intense, but it was written by an author, Maskai, German literature out of the maybe 15th, 16th century. It's 147 pages and it's free on Amazon.
Damn.
First. And then I think there are some games you can play that can create opportunities to talk to your partner. So it's you write down one sentence and you fold it, and then they write down one sentence and you put together this story, right? And then you open it up and you're like first it would be name a location. What are you wearing? What kind of touch do you like? And you go through this and then you open it up and you have and you have this whole narrative, right? For couples, I always say, take 5 minutes. If you're in a long-term relationship and you need to spice it up, 3 to 5 minutes a day, creating a fantasy vacation. You don't even have to plan to go on it, but I want you to talk about what are you guys doing, right? Tapping back into those senses. And I think when I mentioned earlier, thinking about masturbation and writing down your orgasms, taking notes as to what is turning you on and what the fantasies are, so then you can communicate that to your partner and bring some of that play into the bedroom.
And last one for me, I think, as women, sometimes we find it hard to find the words to communicate without, sometimes I am worried about how they're going to feel. I don't want to make other people feel less than in the bedroom. Even though sometimes that's exactly what is happening, where they're really not paying attention to my needs. So speaking for our community, I know they had a question around this where how do you articulate that? I've gotten so much better. I mean, early 20s, catch me not saying a damn word and just doing what they say. But now it feels really good and almost sexy to just ask for what I want. But for women who haven't gotten there yet, what is the language and how can we make it just fun and empower both of us, both partners?
Yep. I think that one thing, again, when I do lectures and workshops, I do group agreements. And one of the group agreements is step up, step back. I think establishing a step up, step back rule in the bedroom with your partner. Because let me be very honest. If you cannot talk to your partner about sex, you might want to rethink having sex with them.
100%.
We're not children anymore.
Yes.
Yes, the conversation might be a little uncomfortable, and grab a bottle of wine and have a sex date, right? So step up, step back. Maybe that means when it comes to the sex date, one night, I decide what the fantasy is. So I'm going to step up, even though that's out of my comfort zone. And you, as maybe my partner who's the aggressor, you're going to step back and take the submissive role. And that's not BDSM, but it's because I feel sometimes with women, I've heard, I'm always the one to initiate sex. And oftentimes when you're in long-term relationships, you get stuck in a pattern. Mm-hmm. So you have to shake that up, have a sex date, get a box of pizza and a box of pizza, a bottle of wine, turn on Red Shoe Diaries. We've all got Netflix. Talk about Netflix and chill. That's some old school 1990s, circuit late 80s, early mid 90s, soft porn from HBO. It's great. Or Showtime, and then just see where it goes. Ooh, this is an interesting fantasy. Step up, step back. One night you step up. The other night I step up. And then I think that it's important, don't yuck my yum, right? If you have to, write it down, collect them over a week's time, put them in a mason jar, just little notes in a mason jar, and then pull out the fantasies one by one.
That's
right?
cute. I
And
like
that's
that
it.
one.
I love that.
Oh, tonight, like as you have a fantasy, write it down, put it on a Post-it, put it in the sex jar. Then when it's your sex date night, because I'm all for scheduling sex dates, especially for long-term relationships, especially when you're busy, work a bunch of jobs, you're ambitious, you have to schedule that time. Then you pull out of the sex jar. What fantasy we doing tonight? Whoa! Also, I'm all for sexting. Start in the beginning of the day, because get that brain going. Start talking about what you want. Be mindful if you're sending pictures. Please don't put your face in them and no identifiable body parts. We're living in a digital media age where breaches happen all the time. Be smart about it. And please don't send unsolicited sex pictures. You never know. Somebody could be in a meeting, could be at work. But at least say, hey, today might be a sexting day. Is that okay? Right? Check in. And then, again, as women, don't be afraid to flex your power of consent and say, I don't like this. You have to remember that you can choose not to have sex at any point. I don't care if y'all been dating for years. I don't care if you are about to do a double back handspring, triple sow cow split onto a motherfucking dildo or I do not care. I want to let you know that in midair, you can change your mind. So don't ever be afraid. Do not be scared to say, I don't like this, stop. And if the person you are with does not respect that boundary, it's time for a new person. That is my advice there. I don't know if I was able to answer that.
Yes, that was beautiful.
That was perfect.
Really, really good. I think those are actionable things and fun and playful and really makes it about both partners. You know, it's not just on us. Like the onus is not just on the women to initiate these things. It kind of gives the men too an opportunity to shake it up.
Yeah, this was amazing. I know
the best.
you have so much to do today.
Can't wait to
Where
hang.
can people connect with you? Where can people learn more from you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on all social media at sexpert. I am in the process of doing some revamping online, but you can still check me out online, www.mhsexpert.com. Email is info@mhsexpert.com. And then, I'm out and about. I'm going to come out there to Los Angeles and we're going to paint the town purple. I
cannot wait.
So
I cannot wait to meet you.
Thank you for making the time. This has really been expanding and I'm really excited to share
Yeah,
with
I'm
everyone.
so awesome. Jealous of the kids you get to be with today.
I know.
So that's
Fun. It's fun.
Thank
so
you for
much
the
fun.
work
All
you
right,
do.
thank you so much, Michelle. Awesome. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Sometimes when I talk about sex, I want to go have sex.
I know. Same.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you all for listening. It means the world to us. And like we mentioned in the beginning, we really appreciate your reviews. So if you'd like to leave a review for us, hey, we will read them on the other side of episodes.
Feel free to leave your Instagram handle so we can try to get you more followers too. If you guys want to write a review with your IG handle.
LOL. Okay, favorite wellness podcast, 5 stars. Krista and Lindsay discuss topics we all have questions or curiosity about, but rarely get to discuss. I'm so thankful for these ladies and the community created around the podcast. It's a staple in my week and has changed my life for the better. 5 stars from Aaron. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks
that
so
means a
much.
lot.
We love being a part
If
of
this
your week.
podcast has at all made an impact on your life, if you could pause it and write a review, takes 5 seconds. 5-star review would mean so much for Lindsay and I. Free content every week. We bust our asses for y'all. And we are so grateful for you. See you on tour. See you in the ambassador program. See you on your podcast pro.
Woo! Love you.
Peace.